A critical trip to the polls. Tonight, we bring you a look inside the race for Wisconsin's U.S. Senate seat.
I thought I was done with politics.
The challenger, Eric Hovde.
Look, I'm in this to win. I don't get into things without planning to win.
The incumbent, Tammy Baldwin.
We are the battleground state.
We're going beyond the campaign rallies.
What would you want to say to those voters?
And the bickering of political ads.
I was raised by my grandparents.
I was diagnosed with MS in 1991.
A deeper look at the candidates running for Wisconsin's Senate seat.
We've become too divided as a country.
There's definitely renewed momentum right now.
Local 5's Behind the Ballot, U.S. Senate race.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for Local 5's Behind the Ballot U.S. Senate race. I'm Timothy Lateau. I've been following Wisconsin's U.S. Senate candidates across the state as they make their way along the campaign trail. The two candidates, Republican challenger Eric Hovde and Democratic incumbent Tammy Baldwin, both sat down with me away from the noise of political ads and bickering. In one-on-one interviews, the candidates not only explain their stances on policymaking, but also share how they have personally been affected by legislation, or the lack of it. Senator Tammy Baldwin is seeking another 6 years in her third term in the Senate. Baldwin is a career politician, having first served in the Wisconsin Assembly and then the U.S. House of Representatives. She was first elected to the Senate in 2012 when she beat former Governor Tommy Thompson. This time, her challenger is Eric Hovde, a Republican who lost to Thompson in that very same U.S. Senate primary race 12 years ago. That was the only time that Hovde ran for political office, but the real estate and banking entrepreneur says he is fully invested in the race once again. I asked Baldwin and Hovde about how they personally would tackle the issues that Wisconsinites care most about, like the economy, health care, and abortion, and how they plan to execute on the promises they make. In this hour-long special, we hope to show you a side of each candidate that you may not have seen before. We're going behind the ballot in Wisconsin's U.S. Senate race. We've been following Wisconsin's U.S. Senate candidates on the campaign trail as they crisscross the state. Republican challenger Eric Hovde goes for a spin in a big rig as he tours a trucking facility in Marshfield and later meets supporters at a bar in Presque Isle near the Michigan border in Vilas County. The Democratic incumbent, Senator Tammy Baldwin, meets with farmers on a dairy farm in Merrill, but first takes us to a roundtable for educators in Green Bay as she hopes to learn more about the challenges they face in the classroom. Well, Senator Baldwin, we appreciate you taking the time. You're the career politician in this race, back on the trail. What's it like, and have you learned anything new from supporters or opponents this time around?
Wow. So, the issues that people are challenged by or grappling with do change from time to time. Right now, a lot of people are struggling with the high cost of things. We've seen, pretty much due to COVID and the laws of supply and demand, prices went up. But it's corporate greed that has prevented them from going back down and reset to previous levels. And so fighting to bring down prices is a really big focus for me. But it's something that I hear from my constituents. Those that require, the cost of prescription medications, for example. We've had some really successful battles recently to lower prices, to hold those big pharmaceutical companies accountable. The high cost of childcare. Childcare also during COVID. Many daycare centers closed. People are struggling to even find childcare, but also to afford the cost of it. And so my work in Washington, D.C. is very responsive to those needs, securing additional funding to help parents afford their child care, as well as for those small businesses to succeed and for workers who work in them to be paid what they're due. So that's a good example of an issue that wasn't necessarily top of mind last time I was running, that I'm hearing from constituents now and really working hard to stand up for Wisconsin working families and address the concerns that they're raising.
Republicans have several chances to flip the Senate this year. There are several tight races and they need to win just one. How concerned are you about Democrats potentially losing the majority?
I think that there's definitely renewed momentum right now, and I'm very hopeful. I've obviously focused on my own race for re-election here in Wisconsin, But when I do talk to other colleagues, we do have to win almost every seat that's up, that's currently held by a Democrat. And I'm hearing encouraging things about how their campaigns are going also.
It's been 12 years since you were back out on the campaign trail. What's it like being back, and what's remained the same, and also what's changed in the time since then?
In today's world, social media and digital media is such a big, important part, where it was just at the very beginning 12 years ago. But really, when you get down to it, it's getting out, listening to people, talking to people, what are their concerns. It still requires you to get up really early every morning and run till late in the evening, and try to get your message out. So there's a lot of similarities, but I would say the whole social media and digital media are the difference. The only other difference is for how ugly politics has become, it's even gotten worse.
Republicans have several chances to flip the Senate this year. One of these races is yours, and is there any kind of added pressure?
Look, I'm in this to win. I don't get into things without planning to win. So I'm running from morning to night, meeting and talking to the people of Wisconsin. I feel this is a very winnable race and feel really good about how the campaign's going. So my plan is on winning this race.
Is there a lot of pressure from nationally, on you?
Look, I'm not taking corporate special interest money like Senator Baldwin is, but are there people across the country wanting to see me be victorious? Of course. If you're in Minnesota and you don't have a chance to elect a Republican senator, you're cheering Eric Hovde on here in Wisconsin. Look, I've operated with pressure my whole life, so I'm pretty good at managing pressure and stress.
You were given that major platform at the Republican National Convention when you delivered that speech. What kind of impact is having a presidential election having on your race?
It's going to have an impact. There's no question. The top of the ticket will influence what will happen with my race. It's too hard to tell right now. The Democrats switched out their candidate, did it in a very undemocratic way. I mean, they just basically appointed Senator Harris as the presidential nominee. It's been a bit of a change, but all in all, I hope President Trump does well. I think he's doing well in the state.
Next on Behind the Ballot, what voters may not know about our candidates.
So what don't voters know about you that they don't see in the ads, on the campaign trail, or in the Senate chamber that you want them to know about you?
That I tirelessly travel this state, that I don't just go to deep blue parts of the state, just cities. It's important to me to listen, to hear from my constituents. I had a great talk with Hans in the barn where he talked about some issues that are now on my agenda to go look into more deeply and try to fight for. So I think maybe if there's something they don't know, it's just how hard I work to make sure that I access my voters. I don't care if they're Republicans, Independents, Democrats, or even non-voters. I want to be in touch.
What don't voters know about Eric Hovde that they don't see in the ads or on stage or on the trail that they think that they should know?
I'm a guy who has a love of life. I'm optimistic. I believe we can get things done. I'm a kind of action-oriented person. I have a big heart. My foundation and all the things I've done with that is very important to me. I have, Christian beliefs that too much has been given, much is expected. To where a man's heart goes, so goes his treasure. I love to have fun. I'm a diehard Packer fan, really positive on the Packers this season. And I like doing outdoor sports and outdoor activities. So that sums me up pretty well.
Why do you think it's so difficult for other politicians to work together, though? And what can you try to do to get more cooperation from across the aisle with your colleagues?
Yeah, one thing I do after each election is I try to learn as much as I can about my new colleagues who are elected for the first time. I know that there's always common ground, and so the Republican members who were elected in the last election, I met with almost every one of them and talked about the issues that are of concern in their states. Almost always we found an issue that we both felt passionately about, and were able to introduce legislation together. By way of example, just 2 weeks ago, a bill that I sponsor with J.D. Vance passed out of the Commerce Committee. This is a measure that tries to make sure that when we have publicly funded research that leads to new innovations, that we manufacture those things here in America and don't outsource that as has been done in the past. And this stops that. And how did that come about? Because he represents a manufacturing state and I represent a manufacturing state. And we're talking about the opportunities when we work together.
The current Congress has been called one of the most unproductive in history, and you were kind of alluding to that as well. In your messaging, you often say it's time for people to stop putting on just their red jerseys or blue jerseys and to put on that red, white, and blue jersey. Do you think that you can bring legislators together from across party lines, and how do you go about doing that?
You got to first by reaching out. You got to first by extending your hand and engaging in a dialogue and listening to people. You've got to lower the rhetoric. Here I'm trying to talk about how to bring our country together, and look at how Senator Baldwin wages her campaign and never reaches across the aisle. Look, in the world of business, if you're not willing to compromise, you're never going to get anything done. That doesn't mean I'm going to compromise my principles, but I'm willing to compromise to advance the ball to improve the lives of the people of Wisconsin. So you got to be willing to make some compromises. You got to be willing to extend your hand, and you got to lower the rhetoric, and you got to stop these personal attacks like she constantly engages in.
We know there's been so much negativity, as you've been talking about, in politics, but are there politicians that you look up to, or are you really trying to carve kind of your own path in politics with more positivity?
Yeah, look, my father served President Reagan, and President Reagan was my kind of North Star. President Reagan radiated an optimistic view, believed deeply in this country and love of America, which I have. I'm very patriotic. And President Reagan's approach was the broad tent strategy. Bring everybody into your party. And if you don't have something good to say about somebody, just don't say it. That's why I don't get mired in the personal attacks against Senator Baldwin. I think how she's run her race is deplorable. But you don't see me saying the type of things that she says against me. I just focus on her record. So President Reagan is the one that I look to, because I think how he handled himself and the message he portrayed and trying to bring our country together, I think was a wonderful thing.
And talking about the economy too, you've been a very successful businessman and entrepreneur. Obviously, a lot of Wisconsinites are feeling those effects of the current economy, though, and the majority of them in Wisconsin have listed that really as their top concern. I guess, do you feel that you're in touch with how the average Wisconsinite is feeling financially? And then what are some of your ideas on how to make this economy a more affordable one?
Sure. First, look, every day I get up and go to work, I work with my colleagues, whether it's building apartment buildings, office buildings, our real estate development company. I walk construction sites, talking to people. So, for me, being on the campaign trail is very similar to what I do in work, because I'm always engaging and interacting with people of Wisconsin and the issues and the concerns that they have. So how do we fix this issue? Well, you have to first understand what is causing the heart of the inflation problem in our country. And that stems from all the excessive spending that Washington has been doing. We increased federal spending during the COVID lockdowns by 40%. And then when we unlocked the economy and people went back to work, we kept the spending up. Well, our country's population didn't grow by 40%, but they kept spending a couple $1 trillion more than we were bringing in. So we've created a massive budget deficit, and our deficit at the federal government level is now $35 trillion. The interest cost on our deficit is bigger than our Defense Department budget, and soon will be bigger than Social Security. And it's going to put Social Security at risk, which is really, scary. Social Security is very important. We got to keep that intact for our elderly. But they're jeopardizing these very important programs. So what do we have to do? We have to pull the spending back to where it was before COVID started and live within our means, because when you spend that much money, the Federal Reserve, the bank for the federal government, has to buy all that debt, and they create more money, and that creates inflation. Too much money chasing the same amounts of goods and services. So we got to fix that part. But then we also have to deal with the excessive regulation. We've put so much regulations, be it EV mandates, just regulations across the board. You talk to any farmer, you talk to any business person, they'll tell you the cost of all this excessive regulation is really hurting their business and driving costs further up. So those are probably the two biggest things that we have to do to get the economy righted again.
Talking a little bit on that economical note, and also kind of going back to that negativity we were talking about at the start, we hear it often in the campaign ads that you're this banker who's made your fortune out of state and that you spend much of your time out of Wisconsin. We hear that often. But why do you think that you're the best candidate for the Senate, the most connected with and prepared to represent Wisconsinites who live in the state every week of the year and really make their living on the local economy?
Well, I just find that so priceless that is Senator Baldwin's attack, and what it is she's just trying to gaslight the people of Wisconsin, because Senator Baldwin really spends almost no time in the state of Wisconsin. She lives in D.C. and she lives in New York with her partner, who's a Wall Street executive. So Senator Baldwin runs against Wall Street, but lives with a Wall Street executive who's a wealth manager to the uber wealthy. And so for her to talk about me, I live in Wisconsin. I pay my tax in Wisconsin. I own properties all over the state of Wisconsin, building a big apartment complex in Racine right now, starting another project in Janesville. I'm a fourth generation Wisconsinite. So I just find that whole attack is just hilarious, because she's trying to distract. All these attacks she's doing is trying to distract, because her policies have failed us on inflation. They have failed us on opening our southern border. They have failed us on our health care. Look at the cost of health care and access to health care. Look at the crime problems that the city of Milwaukee is having. Even Madison, which used to be an extremely safe city, and the crime problems that have popped up in Madison. So she doesn't want to talk about those issues. She doesn't want to debate me. She wants to throw around silly things and try to say, I'm from someplace else when I'm a fourth generation Wisconsinite, and I spend a heck of a lot more time in the state of Wisconsin than she ever has over the last 25 years or over our respective lives. So look, I'm going to stay focused on the issues that matter to the people of Wisconsin. I'm trying to lower the negative tones of these campaigns, because as I've talked about, we've become too divided as a country. We got to stop putting on the red jersey or the blue jersey and fighting amongst ourselves. We got to put on the red, white, and blue jersey and come together and fix these problems. So I've tried to run a campaign that's more talking about issues, being positive, bringing our country together, and her whole campaign is making up lies or taking things out of context and trying to attack me. That's not good for our country.
One point that Senator Baldwin has made both in the ads and on the campaign trail is that Eric Hovde has called farmers lazy, something he refutes.
If you haven't heard, my opponent seems to look down on farmers, seems to think they're lazy, and I think you're the hardest working people on earth. You can't run a dairy farm without being available 24/7, 365. You don't take vacations, or you cover if you do. And so I just want to tell you how deeply I respect that.
Taking that little piece out of a longer explanation and trying to spin something, I mean, they have something so absurd saying, I think farmers are lazy. Are you kidding me? I think farmers are the hardest working people in our country. And if you listen to the quote they're saying, it is nothing talking about being lazy. It's talking about the advancement in farming and using tractors, technology change.
So after hearing Hovde's explanation, I asked Senator Baldwin on her take about the use of negative campaign ads in this race.
Turning now to your opponent, Eric Hovde, he said that he's tried to stay away from attacks and campaign ads in an effort to sort of reduce negative tones in this race. He feels that you've done the opposite, though. What's your take on that?
So I focus very much in my work on bringing the parties together. I couldn't pass all the measures that I've passed if I didn't work across the party aisle. But I think that voters need to know the positions that my opponent has taken. And it's his words that are being shown to voters.
Speaking on the economy, we know that's such a top issue for Wisconsin voters. They're really feeling the effects of inflation in the current economy with rising prices, and some don't think that politicians are doing enough. What would you want to say to those voters, and then what legislative steps can you and your colleagues on both sides of the aisle take to try to alleviate this?
Yeah, you know, I talked to a lot of Wisconsinites who are frustrated that they haven't seen prices drop as we emerge from the pandemic. And you know, when you look more deeply into it, the companies that produce the things that we buy in our grocery stores, now that we are emerging from the pandemic, they have lower costs for productions, but they haven't lowered the price. That's price gouging. That's corporate greed. And we need to really have a cop on the beat, in my mind, to help consumers fight back. You know, their practices need to be observed. And I think the Federal Trade Commission should be granted authority to do that, and I sponsor legislation that would make that happen. But yeah, in the early days when we saw prices go down, in the early days when we were seeing prices go up, it was because supply was very limited and the demand was very high. But now that that's reset, it shouldn't be the case that they keep their prices sky high. And we're doing the same with regard to standing up to the big pharmaceutical companies. The idea that they can set any list price that they want and get away with it, well, that's just not right. And we're actually having some success with Medicare negotiating for lower prices, and frankly, shining the spotlight on their abusive practices. Some of them are actually voluntarily changing those.
How do our candidates plan to make health care more affordable? That's next.
Welcome back to Local 5's Behind the Ballot U.S. Senate Race Special. I'm Timothy Lateau. Over the last few weeks, I've sat down with both candidates for Wisconsin's U.S. Senate seat, incumbent Tammy Baldwin and challenger Eric Hovde, to gain more insight into who our candidates are. We're going beyond what you hear in the political ads and campaign rallies to really get to know our candidates. You've also seen a more personal side to our candidates and what's important to them off the campaign trail. Now, how they plan to tackle the challenges of affordable health care and another pressing issue, abortion. You're watching Local 5's Behind the Ballot U.S. Senate Race.
At the Brighton Mosier family farm in the rolling hills of central Wisconsin, Senator Baldwin is an open book for her constituents, and they have a lot they want to ask her.
People sometimes ask off-the-wall questions, and you know what? That's the prerogative of people in a democracy. You can ask whatever you want.
Dairy farmer Hans Brighton Mosier is elated to be showing the senator around his farm in Merrill, and he also wants to inform her of the issues rural Wisconsinites are facing.
If you've got an opportunity to speak one-on-one with your federal representative, regardless of your politics, you're a fool not to.
For a multi-generational farmer, there's a slew of topics that come to Brighton Mosier's mind that he'd like to see addressed.
I feel like in the short amount of time that we had a fairly fruitful conversation as we walked through the barn and so forth about some of the things like immigration, about climate, about finally trying to do something about antitrust legislation that has a real impact on our farm gate prices.
Baldwin's supporters, especially in rural Wisconsin, advise her to make sure she's not forgetting any part of the state. Rural Wisconsinites don't want her to take urban voters for granted, but they believe their nearby neighbors that are still on the fence will be the deciding factor in November.
Well, it's a campaign year. She needs to spend a lot of time going out to these rural places and saying, are you aware that? This, and this.
Pretty much what she's already been doing, which is getting out and meeting the people, making sure that she's attentive to their needs and desires, making sure that she gets to all parts of the state because she does represent the whole state and the state's interests as well.
Brighton Mosier hopes that Baldwin is able to win over undecided voters with her genuine, down-to-earth approach.
She should do what she's been doing, which is be honest, be forthright, be transparent, and try and tell people what she's been doing.
Shifting to healthcare, which is another top issue for Wisconsin voters, it's something that's also impacted you from really a young age, whether it was your childhood illness, some of your mother's struggles, and also you being a caregiver for your grandmother as well. Improving access and affordability has been really a cornerstone to your campaign's messaging. Why is that, and what will you do to execute on that promise?
Yeah, so I hear from so many Wisconsinites who really relate to the struggles that I and my family faced when I tell those stories. So by way of example, when I was 9, I had a serious childhood illness. I was raised by my grandparents. They had insurance, but found in my time of need that it didn't cover, family insurance doesn't cover grandkids, just children. And so they looked for insurance for me. But back then, there was no legal obligation on the part of insurance companies to cover somebody with a pre-existing condition or somebody who was, battling cancer or had diabetes. And so there were millions of Americans who went without insurance because they couldn't get it at any price. When I was in the House of Representatives, I fought to pass the Affordable Care Act, which said once and for all, you must provide insurance. You can't discriminate against people because they have survived cancer or they are, have a pre-existing condition like myself. And righting that wrong and help write the bill was very impactful for so many. I, by the way, wrote the amendment that allows young people to stay on their parents' health insurance until they turn 26. And when that was implemented overnight, millions of people who didn't have, young people who didn't have insurance were able to get onto their parents' plans. But there's more work to do. The Affordable Care Act was an extremely important big step forward for coverage and affordability. But we still have a lot of work to do to bring down prices and make sure that there aren't disparities depending on whether you're a rural Wisconsinite or an urban Wisconsinite or a suburban Wisconsinite. And so a lot of my focus has also been access to maternal care. We have what we call maternal care deserts, where you would have to drive well over an hour to get to your doctor or to deliver. And we need to close those inequities that exist in our healthcare system.
Just minutes from the Michigan border, Vilas County residents are just as rooted in Wisconsin politics as any.
For me and for my family, my kids, it's all about the economy.
At the popular watering hole in Presque Isle, PI Pub, supporters welcome their Senate candidate Eric Hovde with a warm welcome and a shot of confidence.
Oh, I'm definitely going to vote for Hovde.
Dan Kramer wants to see the Senate flip to red as a result of the Badger State, and considering support for Democratic incumbent Tammy Baldwin would be unthinkable.
No, never. Never. No. I'm a Ron Johnson fan all the way, and I hope Hovde can join him.
To pull off the win over Baldwin, Vilas County Republican Chair Linda Prane has a piece of advice for Hovde that she thinks will help improve his image.
I'd like him to loosen up personally. I think he's a really, one-on-one, he's a really great guy and he's easy to talk to. I think sometimes he's very, very serious because he's so smart. And what you saw him do today is he answers the questions. He really knows what he's talking about and he's passionate about it. But he's also funny and he's also relatable. And I'd like to see more of that personally.
For Prane, Hovde isn't just the better choice on the ticket, but the political newcomer represents fresh and intelligent ideas he'll pack with him to Washington.
He's clearly going to be the smartest senator in the U.S. Senate when he gets there because this guy, he's got a lot of brain power. What do you believe in? Do you want those things for your family or not?
Certainly an issue on the minds of Wisconsinites, concerned about medical bills and drug prices. You were diagnosed with MS a few decades ago. Has that kind of shaped your outlook at all on medical costs? And what can you do to bring costs down? I know that you've been critical about the Affordable Care Act as well. So what does your vision for healthcare reform look like?
Yeah, look, I was diagnosed with MS in 1991. You know, it's kind of an earth-shattering news to get as a 27-year-old guy who had a whole life in front of him. And, you know, I went through difficult years. There's no question about that. Fortunately, the last 20 years, my MS has been largely stable, and given it's been stable for the length of time, the prognosis is very good. But, you know, I understand the complications of having a disease and how scary that is. And I've seen drug prices just skyrocket. I mean, the medications that I started taking over 30 years ago and seeing how those prices have gone up, I mean, literally, you know, 700–800% the same drugs. It's insane. Washington hasn't done anything about this. Senator Baldwin's been talking about it and nothing has happened. So it's an issue we need to address, but it's our whole healthcare system. Yes, Obamacare promised that healthcare costs would come down or slow down, and in fact they've accelerated more. The access to care has become a big problem. Remember, he said you'll be able to keep your family doctor. The family doctor has all but disappeared. So look, we need competition back into our healthcare sector. We've allowed these big health conglomerates to merge with each other, and that has squeezed out competition. We need price transparency. Think of it, when you show up to buy almost anything, you get a price for it. Go try to do that when you go to a hospital and you need a surgery or you need some medical procedure. You can't get a price for it. Look at drug pricing. Nobody has an idea of how these drugs are priced, how the prices are passed through. The PBM issue is a whole mess. So look, Senator Baldwin has never had to buy herself health insurance. I've had to not only buy myself, but thousands of employees. And I've had to dig into this issue deeply, and there is many structural problems in our healthcare system today. And if I get to the U.S. Senate, that will be one of my big issues. Because, you know, I have funded a lot of medical research in multiple sclerosis. I've seen people that struggle mightily with, you know, not just MS, but a lot of other diseases. And we've got to do better in this country, and there's no reason why we can't, to bring down the price of drugs, to provide more affordable health care, and get the access to care improved.
Do you think that common ground can or should be met on a national level about abortion and reproductive rights? And where do you stand on this issue? What's your confidence that you can turn the tables on Baldwin over the next few weeks, and what do you have to do to accomplish that?
The fact that I got into this race against a person who's been in politics literally her whole life, you know, been in Washington for 26 plus years and been in state government for another, I don't know, 14 plus years. you know, my name ID is coming up, and people are starting to tune into this election. Plus, I've had more negative attack ads. I mean, anybody watching has seen just an onslaught of negative attack ads, almost every single one of them just completely lying about what I've said or my record, or taking that little piece out of a longer explanation and trying to spin something. I mean, they have something so absurd saying, I think farmers are lazy. Are you kidding me? I think farmers are the hardest working people in our country. And if you listen to the quote they're saying, it is nothing talking about being lazy. It's talking about the advancement in farming and using tractors, technology change. But you know, when you're dealing with you know, running against a career politician who's been there a long time, whose name ID is higher, and then all the special interest money that she brings in and that they use to attack me, it's gonna take some time getting there. But I like the direction. I feel really good about where we stand right now, and lots gonna change here in the next 30, 45 days as the election heats up and people start getting more focused.
Do you think that common ground can or should be met on a national level about abortion and reproductive rights? And where do you stand on the issue?
Just another issue that Senator Baldwin has been misleading the state of Wisconsin about where I stand on it. And I've been very clear from the time I've gotten into this race and even before. Look, this has been put back to the people of Wisconsin. I think it should be decided through a referendum, where every voter in the state of Wisconsin should have a right to vote on this issue. And hopefully, and I believe, the people of Wisconsin will find a common sense and compassionate approach. I'll have my one vote. Look, I have two daughters, blessed with two daughters, and I believe in the beauty of life. And I agree with the exceptions for rape, incest, and the health of the mother. And I agree that early on in a woman's pregnancy, she should have a right to choose. But if a baby can be born healthy and alive, then it's unconscionable that we should think of terminating that child. You know, Senator Baldwin has voted for, in the U.S. Senate, for abortions up to the point of delivery. I am fundamentally opposed to that. I think there is a reasonable period of time that everybody in this state can agree on. And I think it should go to a referendum, and I think we can get this resolved.
Do you think nationally that referendums could be instituted in other states too to try to reach
I don't think this is ever going to get dealt with on a national level. It's been pushed back to the states, and states are resolving this. But the reason why it won't happen at a national level is because you would need control, one party to have control of the presidency, the Congress, the House of Representatives, and 60 Senate seats because of the filibuster. And I just don't see that happening. So it will just, you know, like most things in Washington, just dysfunction, nothing gets done, and all it is political fighting. I think this has been put back to the states. A lot of states have gotten this resolved. Hopefully the state of Wisconsin can get it resolved. So women that are going through that difficult, you know, decision, you know how to proceed.
Do you think that common ground can or should be met on a national level about abortion and reproductive rights? And where do you stand on this issue?
You know, I believe that I supported Roe versus Wade. I think it dealt with very comprehensively the rights of women to control their own destiny in terms of bodily autonomy, the right to plan your family, when and whether to have a family. And that was devastated when the Supreme Court of the United States overturned Roe. And anyone who celebrates that owns the chaos that we're seeing right now, where, you know, in Texas, abortion access is banned before most women even know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. In Idaho, where you can be penalized for crossing state lines to access health care. In Wisconsin, when we heard harrowing stories of women who were left to become sicker and sicker and sicker before they could get the health care that they need. So I believe we need to restore the rights and freedoms of half of America by codifying Roe versus Wade. And I'm proud to be the lead author of the Women's Health Protection Act, which would do just that.
What do you think it will take for people on both sides of the aisle to come together on this issue, though? Do you think that anything can be met from bipartisanly?
Yeah, I also just have to remember that in the early days of Planned Parenthood, this was such a bipartisan issue. If you look at the community leaders who were involved a couple decades ago in making sure that prenatal and prenatal care, STD checks, wellness checks, access to contraception, and when necessary, access to abortion care. This was totally bipartisan, and it saddens me to see that this has become a partisan issue when it never was before. When you look at where the public is on this, look at the referenda they had after Roe was overturned in states like Kansas, where overwhelmingly Republican state, and yet the voters said, no, we want women to have access to comprehensive health care. And we don't want politicians and judges deciding these questions. We need women deciding these questions. And so I think it is partisan in legislative bodies. I do not think it is among Wisconsinites or most Americans.
How confident are you that you'll win another 6 years in the Senate?
We are the battleground state. We might well decide who the next president is. We might well decide in Wisconsin what party controls the United States Senate. We're used to races being fought to razor-thin margins. Think of Trump winning Wisconsin in 2016 by less than a percentage point, and Biden winning Wisconsin in 2020 by less than a percentage point. I am going to stick to my campaign plan, which involves getting all around Wisconsin, red counties, blue counties, purple counties, meeting people where they are, listening to them, and accepting the responsibility of fighting for them fiercely in Washington, D.C., taking their concerns to heart, whether it's farmers talking about the headwinds they face in the dairy industry and other aspects of agriculture, or the struggles to bring good-paying manufacturing jobs back to Wisconsin, or continuing the work that I'm doing on infrastructure to make sure that great jobs in the trades are available throughout our communities.
Next, one last thought from both of our candidates on their state.
One thing I do after each election is I try to learn as much as I can about my new colleagues who are elected for the first time. I know that there's always common ground, and so the Republican members who were elected in the last election, I met with almost every one of them and talked about the issues that are of concern in their states. Almost always we found an issue that we both felt passionately about, and were able to introduce legislation together.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Senator. It was a great conversation, and best of luck to you on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Look, the one thing about the state of Wisconsin you get to realize real quickly are two things. We live in a beautiful state. We're blessed to live in such a beautiful state. And the people of Wisconsin are really nice people. There is a true thing about Wisconsin nice. So, I love driving around and meeting the people of Wisconsin, listening to hear what their concerns are. And that's an important thing, to listen. Listen to what people's issues are so you can respond and understand their concerns. So, it's been a wonderful thing for me to meet so many of the wonderful people of Wisconsin and talking about their issues. But, I'm proud of my fellow Wisconsinites. They're genuine, they're nice. The RNC convention, we were such great hosts for that. So yeah, we live in a beautiful state, and we're really friendly people.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time, Eric. I know it's a busy season for you on the campaign trail, but we definitely appreciate the time.
Thank you, Tim.
That's our program for tonight. Thanks for watching Behind the Ballot Race for U.S. Senate. We hope you learned more about each candidate, both about their stances on the issues most important to Wisconsinites, as well as about who they are as a person. Each of them discussed how they will handle the economy, healthcare, and abortion and reproductive rights. And we also learned why they believe they can unify the Senate and Congress. It's up to you to decide between the Democratic incumbent Tammy Baldwin or Republican challenger Eric Hovde. 6 years in the U.S. Senate are on the line in this race, in addition to a potential flip of the Senate majority, and you'll have your say with your vote. As always, you can turn here to Local 5 and wearegreenbay.com to bring you the latest election coverage. For Local 5 News, I'm Timothy Lateau. Thank you for joining us here from all of us here at Local 5. Have a great night.